So is there just a standout freshman to this year's Duke class like Cooper Flagg was this past year? What returning player has the most to prove? So many of those questions we'll dive into from you guys. It's a Mailbag Monday on Locked On Blue Devils.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is J.J. Jackson. It's so great to have you here with us today on Monday, July 14th, 2025. Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop where we discuss everything going on inside the life of Duke athletics. Today, we've got a Mailbag Monday. We answered questions from you guys that were sent to us via email, lockedonbluedevils@gmail.com, or on X at @LO_Blue Devils. Really happy to dive into those with our good pal Brian Horace at Duke Blogger online, and we'll get into those questions here in just a moment. If you have not done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free, wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star rating and written review. Also, make sure that you watch our show each and every day on YouTube. Like this video, share it with your friends, and most importantly, subscribe to our YouTube channel, because we're so fired up to have you guys a part of the journey. We get closer to 4,000 subscribers each and every day, and I can't wait to celebrate that milestone with all of you guys. So, without further ado, the aforementioned friend of the program, Brian Horace, back with us once again. Summertime is flying by, man. We've got some mailbag questions to dive into. I hope you're doing well.
Yeah, man, for sure. Let's get on it.
All right, let's do this thing. So a mixed bag of some of these questions that were sent in, but I'm very curious your take on a lot of these. First one I want to dive into, someone writes in and asks, did Duke miss anything in building their roster this offseason, or did they fill any potential holes? Obviously, when you have 5 players that are drafted into the NBA, there are going to be some pieces that you have to replace there, Brian, when we look at this. I feel pretty good about how they approach the offseason and roster construction. What about you?
Yeah, I think so as well. I don't think they missed anything per se. I mean, obviously, outside looking in, they are definitely banking on their guys, developing. Nothing from the portal this season, which was an interesting factor. But it's a gamble that Scheyer is willing to go with, and I think the devil is better than the devil you don't, and I think going with the guys that he's developed is going to be a prove it year for Scheyer in that regard.
It's certainly a zig when everybody else is zagging in the sport, or however you want to look at it, because like so many people or so many teams, all the teams except for like 3 in the sport, dude, were the ones that had players enter the transfer portal and leave, and that's not the case that Duke was able to have there. I think also when you look at it, the fact that you're able to rely on a freshman class once again that's so highly regarded is big when you're constructing this roster. Duke did go out and do a little bit of work in the transfer portal with guys like Ife Ufuchukwu, Jack Scott comes in from Princeton. They're more thought of as kind of practice, end of the bench type guys. Maybe you can make an argument because the rosters did expand in the sport by 2 spots in the house settlement. Maybe you can make the argument that a practice player or 2 would have been nice to have, like a one more guard, one more big body in the front court, considering the injuries Duke has had. But in today's day and age, I don't know how at a program like Duke, you want to be honest with the guys, and Scheyer has always been honest with his guys. Who's going to sign up for that, Brian, if they're obviously able to play elsewhere?
Exactly. You're only going to get a certain amount of guys. You're not going to ever fill that roster with 13 guys that are looking to play. It's just not going to happen. So there's a fine line you have to walk between depth and reality, and I think that Scheyer's done a good job of that. And they have the best medical staff on the planet, so hopefully they get through the season unscathed, as I knock on wood here.
Yeah.
But I think he's done it the right way. I think at some point you have to look the guys in the eyes that you've been running with since they were freshmen and say, look, we believe in you. show me what you got. And I think this is that year for, for guys like Foster and so forth.
Yeah, everybody and on that medical staff and around Duke in general is so highly regarded. But you almost want it to be like you don't know about them because you're that healthy, right?
Exactly.
And you don't need to be getting all these medical updates from the guy. I know Scheyer spoke last week and was talking about some of the updates for Pat Gongba and Malik Brown specifically, who had been dealing with some things, and they continue to progress. We're seeing them in some footage throughout the course of the offseason. Maybe not everything, but certainly good to hear that they're coming along at their own pace. All right, here's the next one. We've got another question here. Will there be a breakaway best freshman like Cooper Flagg last season, or will things be more even with the freshmen this year? I like this question because I feel as though you can make an argument for a breakaway freshman, but it is so damn hard to go ahead and put somebody up to Cooper Flagg's expectations.
Yeah, and I think that in terms of impact, I think a guy like Cam Boozer will have that sort of impact. I don't know if he'll have that impact in such a flashy manner. I think he's, a guy that prepares like a pro and is reliable, and I think he'll be a standout, but I don't think that he's a standout in the way that Cooper Flagg was a standout where, he was the guy that they had to rely on in a lot of ways. But I do think that this team is probably a little more evenly distributed with the talent. I think that's something that Scheyer has been aiming for, his entire tenure, is to have a team, not like the Zion years where, you had three guys at the top and then everyone was a step below. I think his whole thing was to have a team where guys are competing and, there's no real, obviously you're going to have guys that are, upper echelon talent, but I don't think that there's a player on this roster that isn't expecting to contribute in a major way.
Yeah, Brian, we kind of go like class to class. Last year's freshman class, what we're expecting for this upcoming season. Beyond Cooper Flagg, it was a freshman class that had 3 top 10 picks, or including him, 3 top 10 picks in the NBA draft, and then 3 players who were going to return for a sophomore season, a 6-man class. Now we've got this 5-man group for the Blue Devils with Cam Boozer at the top. You could consider him sort of the outlier a little bit amongst his peers in that freshman class, but not behind him very far at all. I think people are regarding Dame Sarr. Nick Haminia continues to rise. Exactly. And then Duke's got something in Caden Boozer and Sebastian Wilkins as well.
Exactly. There's a lot of talent right there. And I think Scheyer's done a masterful job of sort of bringing in guys that may not be on a lot of other, people's radars and sort of turning those guys into, top picks. He's very good at this this talent evaluation thing, which is obviously a something a coach has to be. But he's done a very, very impressive job at that, and I think he's done it again.
Yeah, we want him to continue to be impressive at talent evaluation. Bring the best guys to play for Duke. We love him the year that we got him and that sort of thing. So awesome question there. We've done a couple of so far. We're due for our first timeout. More Mailbag Monday when Locked On Blue Devils continues. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories and not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. Are you tired of endless scrolling, trying to find the best deal? Well, Game Time's Zone Deals picks the best seat in the section for you. I also love that with Game Time, you get a panoramic seat view in the app, so you know what you're walking into. You can see the view of the stage and everything around you when you're looking at these concert tickets. Game Time also has tickets right now for Major League Baseball, all the big-time events happening over the summer. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, for $20 off. Download the Game Time app. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Game Time is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Okay, let's keep going here on Mailbag Monday. Brian Horace is here with me at Duke Blogger, Check out DukeBlogger.com for all his coverage of Duke stuff. I've had a couple of mailbag questions so far. Let's keep this thing going. We were just talking about impressive freshmen this upcoming year for Duke. So as we move forward, which returning player will improve the most from last season? So we had 5 freshmen to kind of highlight a little bit ago. Now we've got 5 returning players to look like. And I think you can make an argument for a number of different guys here.
Yeah, it's hard to answer that with one, but I'll try to get it down to 2.
Okay.
I think Caleb Foster had such an up and down year. I think any semblance of consistency from him at the point guard spot is going to feel like a heavy rise for him. But I think, he's in a unique position this year where he has to be the leader of this team. And I think for one, he's going to rise to that occasion.
Without a doubt. I think when you look at this team in particular, with, again, having the 5 options to choose from, a loaded freshman class, someone like Caleb Foster, who's been in your program for a while, I want to rely on him to kind of lead the way, set the tone, and it feels like he did that a little bit last year. Now there's more of a responsibility for him to do that. And then Malik Brown is that other guy who's going beyond just his sophomore year of college, like the other 3 in the group, right?
Yeah, I also feel like Pat Gongba is a guy that's going to easily, surpass what he did in year 1. I think we got, a lot of glimpses of what he can do. But if you watched him, as a high school guy, he was he's a pick and pop guy. He, pick and roll. He was a pretty decent mid-range and 3-point shooter. Not saying he's going to do that, in mass, but I think that Scheyer is going to be able to open up his skill set a little bit more, open the gates for him a little bit.
Let's just give the people what they want. At this point, we've already given so many returning players. We'll kind of highlight all of them, and they do each have things to prove. And another guy, we could talk about the outside shooting with Isaiah Evans and Darren Harris, but let's start with Darren Harris, someone who didn't see the floor a whole lot this past year. Shout out to him, though, man, to just come back for another season when there was a market out there for Darren Harris.
Oh, without a doubt. The fact that he wanted to be a Blue Devil, come hell or high water, he stuck with the program. Obviously, they had honest conversations with Darren. And, I think now he has a lot to prove, and I think he's on that path to proving it. I think, we all saw him at Beach Jam do his thing, against Cooper Flagg's team. And, he was a monster. And I think, having that year where he didn't get to see the floor as much is going to motivate him more than probably anyone else on this roster.
Yeah, I think when we look at him in particular, the 40th recruit in the class last season for the Blue Devils, according to 247 Sports. And it's crazy that there's always a few of those guys where it's like any other school, you're celebrating that we got the 40th guy in the entire country. And at Duke, unfortunately, with all the talent that comes through, you could kind of be forgotten about. And so I in some ways, it's hard to fault people for wanting to look elsewhere and see what other opportunities are out there. And Darren Harris didn't do that. He's locked in. He's a part of that PVI connection there that, Pat Gongba with him in high school and what Duke's been able to get out of Roach and Keels and all those other guys. So happy to see him kind of locked in and that sort of thing. And then shout out Showtime Slim, man. Continue to prove to the world that you're a bucket getter. 82% of your shot attempts were 3-pointers last year. As I say that stat all the time throughout the course of the year. I want him to keep knocking down those 3-point shots, but also how about you prove a little bit? I know you got it, but let's see a little bit more of that offensive game.
For sure. I've seen him a little bit in the some of the summer workouts, and he's, not to say he's gained a lot of weight or anything, but you can tell his shoulders are a little broader. There's a little bit more to him now, and I think that's going to impact him more than anything, just being able to be consistent when he's inside the lane, being able to finish through contact, being able to, to get his shot outside of that 3. That's going to be the hugest thing for him. And obviously his defense, upticked each game during this season. So I think he's going to be a real one.
No doubt. All right, let's next question here on this Mailbag Monday. Again, if you ever have questions for us to the everydayer, send them LockedOnBlueDevils@gmail.com. LO_Blue Devils on X, or comment down below on these videos. This is a fun one. What is Duke's ceiling and floor total win-wise in the regular season as you look at next year? These are kind of always difficult to forecast. I don't necessarily know that last year, Brian, we saw a 19-1 run coming through the ACC. I don't know that Scheyer specifically saw that they were able to going to be, that dominant within the conference itself and still pick up your non-conference wins.
Yeah. It was, obviously it was a down ACC year, and Duke really just steamrolled everybody for the most part. And it's a hard thing to predict because obviously the ACC is going to be a lot better this coming season. There's just no way that it's not. It's a tough one. With, I think 28 wins last year in the regular season.
Yep.
I think ceiling. I think we go 28. It's a different team. It's they have a lot more to prove, and it's a tougher schedule.
Right.
Floor 22.
Yeah.
You have to think they're going to drop some games early, and that's just part of the process. And there's nothing to be, hopefully the fans allow that to happen and don't freak out. But that's just, it really only matters what happens after that.
Yeah, and the non-conference schedule is going to be brutal, and hopefully Duke's able to play more competitive games throughout the regular season, as Scheyer was talking about, to help prepare them for the postseason and that sort of thing. When we're talking about a floor, though, what I love, and I hope that we don't take for granted, is that we're getting to 20 wins. That's just been this big standard, and this, what I'm saying? Like it's awesome that just this collection of talent. That this team is going to start to figure it out. Sure, there are going to be losses along the way, but to your point, as long as you're playing the best basketball at the end of the year, that other stuff doesn't matter. A couple of slip-ups in the regular season, you can still reverse course and make anything possible in March.
Exactly. You're going to learn a lot from those early losses if you have them, and that's part of the process. That's how you build.
All right, we've got one more break here on the program today. This has been a fun one. It's a Mailbag Monday. We'll step aside for a quick timeout here when Locked On Blue Devils continues. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Blue Devils your first listen and your first watch here today. I want to tell you about the Portal Show with Locked On's very own Brian Smith. He's got the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape. This week starts SEC Media Days, getting to hear from all the college football coaches ahead of the new season. Next week, we'll be in in Charlotte for ACC kickoff. ACC Media Days coming your way, and Brian Smith has it all covered with that college football landscape. Find the Portal on YouTube or wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. Also, do yourself a favor and make sure that you check out Locked On College Basketball with Isaac Shade and Andy Patton. They talk hoops every single day, and Duke is a big part of that conversation. So go ahead and check them all out. Thanks for watching. Again, Locked On Blue Devils. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Like this video. Share it with your friends. Shout out to all the everydayers that we've got out there. All right, as we move forward, I've got my man Brian Horace here with me. A few more questions that we want to dive into, and let's jump to this one. We'll continue to talk about this upcoming season. What are your early thoughts on the non-conference schedule for next year? Billy, it looks like, sent that via email, so shout out to Billy. But talked about this a few times, a loaded non-conference slate that Duke has put together. The ACC drops the games from 20 conference games down to 18, so that's 2 more spots to kind of work with as you're constructing your schedule. And Duke didn't shy away from competition, I think, is what we look at.
I mean, without a doubt. I mean, this is one of the toughest schedules I think Duke as a school has ever had in the modern era. There's a lot there, and there's a lot of SEC teams. There's, what struck me honestly was that this schedule is going to challenge the players for sure, but it's also going to challenge Scheyer as a coach. I think he has 4 former national championship coaches he's going to be going against, and all different, varying styles. I think this is going to challenge he and his staff just as much as the players themselves.
A massive schedule that the Blue Devils have when your very first game of the season is against Texas, an NCAA tournament team from a year ago. They go and get Sean Miller to come in and be their new coach for this upcoming season. I mean, that sets the tone right out of the gates. You're going to be at Michigan State in a return trip that Duke owes them there. You'll play Kansas in the Champions Classic, Arkansas in Chicago on Thanksgiving night. Then, of course, you've got the SEC Challenge ACC SEC Challenge that Duke will have a matchup with the reigning national champs in Florida. And then this doesn't even mention when Duke comes back your way and they've got a game in the middle of ACC play. All of a sudden, they're going to find themselves there in the nation's capital taking on Michigan, man, in a non-conference game.
It's a juggernaut of a schedule. But, I mean, honestly, in today's, college basketball landscape, that's what you have to do to get a team prepared. And, it's the right thing to do, and it's good for the sport. It's good for, good for the team. There's no real reason not to.
Undoubtedly. All right. Last question that we'll dive into here today on the Mailbag Monday. We've talked a lot about Duke's team right now. Let's talk about Duke guys in the Brotherhood, former Duke Blue Devils here that are in the NBA. It's summertime, so I'm going to go to Summer League with some of these questions that we've got here. The heat is up across the country, certainly there in Las Vegas. So let's talk about it. What former Duke Blue Devil has the most approved currently in Las Vegas Summer League? And it's awesome that, again, we find ourselves positioned where we've got a number of different guys that we could choose from here. For sure. And again, I'm going to have to answer it with two different things here. Please.
Start off with the two guys that went in the second round, Proctor and Sion James, who both got guaranteed deals.
Yep.
I think with that, you have, with a lot of other second round guys getting two-way deals and non-guaranteed money and things like that, I think there's an onus on them to make a difference and make an impact right away. There's that, but I also think Cooper Flagg. I know he's heralded, he's got accolades, but being the number one pick in the NBA draft means that every player you go against in Summer League is going to try to take your head off. And I think that's going to be something that he has to sort of deal with. And after not playing basketball, competitively since Duke lost, there's a lot of time where he could be a little rusty. And guys in the Summer League, those guys have been grinding.
Yep.
So I think being able to go against those guys is going to put him at a bit of a disadvantage, and he has to sort of, rise above that. I'm sure, after a game or two or three, we'll see the Cooper Flagg we saw at Duke. But at first, guys are going to be coming strong at him, and there's just no doubt about that.
Yeah, I mean, look, there are a couple of guys that from this class you could talk about, and you did there with this. I love the second-round picks there. Hopefully, Sion James and Tyrese Proctor prove their worth. There's not a level of comfort that necessarily sets in right now, and I don't think there will be when you've been at a program like – and just their DNA itself that those two guys are as men. Also, Duke's got, someone like Jack White, Marquise Bolden, DJ Stewart, all these guys from previous years. A couple of guys I want to highlight here. Wendell Moore Jr. Playing Summer League right now, who was a first-round pick just a few seasons ago. This is when rookie contracts have expired. He's kind of bounced around from team to team the last few years. Summer League work right now with Orlando. It's a big year right now for Wendell Moore to make sure if he really wants to hold his own in the NBA that he's ready to step up to that test.
Yeah, for sure. He's going to have to definitely prove himself to be, consistent on both ends of the floor. In a league that really values offense, I think he's going to have to make his mark, being a 3-and-D guy. And I think he can do that. It's just a matter of the right situation.
And then the last guy we got to highlight, Brian, in terms of a Las Vegas Summer League, let's prove to the world we're ready to go. We've already seen it a little bit because, some teams play in the California Classic. They've got a couple of early Summer League contests that they get into. And someone who has been proving he's ready to rock and roll in year two is Kyle Filipowski. And the reason I say that is you look at Utah, this is a team, much like Charlotte, much like Washington, who thought we've got the three best odds to win the lottery, to win the Cooper Flagg sweepstakes. And they end up 4, 5, 6 in the draft order this year. And it's three other teams who kind of jump up. That's a whole nother discussion with how the lottery plays out. But Utah very clearly one of the worst teams in the league. We've seen them kind of overhaul their roster a little bit with some bigger names that have taken up space in their salary cap this offseason. Jordan Clarkson no longer there. Colin Sexton on his way out. As Kyle Filipowski prepares for year two on his deal, it's like you want to prove I'm ready to be a part of your future. Like make sure when we're projecting the Utah Jazz in the years to come, my name is a part of it.
Yeah, without a doubt. And, he obviously has a very unique skill set for being, his size and being able to handle the ball, being able to shoot. And, you know, honestly,
He's so
adding,
gifted, man. It's been fun to
oh,
watch him these games.
yeah, and adding Ace Bailey to that mix is going to honestly give him, you know, that other guy that can, you know, honestly get him open and get him some looks.
Yep.
So I think those two guys together, they could, you know, I'm not saying they're going to be a playoff team or anything like that, but they can definitely do some damage. And I think this summer, you know, is really a time for him to prove that he can sort of lead this franchise into the future.
Another bottom line, you've got a lot of former Duke players that you're able to watch these days. In a time where live sports are not necessarily at a premium, if you're not a baseball person, and even this week, it's All-Star Week for Major League Baseball, so those games aren't even going on. You know, the golf tournaments don't pick up until the end of the week. We just saw Wimbledon come and go. I mean, people are looking for things. So go check out all these summer league games that are happening right now. Brian, this was awesome, man. Loved getting a chance to kind of go through these Mailbag Monday questions with you. Tell me about Duke Blogger, though. How can people tap in? How can they support you?
Yeah, man. Hit the site up, dukeblogger.com, on X at Duke Blogger, on Blue Sky at dukeblogger.com. Let's have a conversation. It's always fun.
Awesome. We'll do this again soon, Brian. Good to see you, man.
You too, man. You take care.
All right, that's Brian Horace joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. That's going to do it for our show here today. Thanks always for your support. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Subscribe to us wherever it is that you get your podcast. Leave us a 5-star rating and written review. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.